My name is Bobby. A dark figure has entered Collinwood, one that brings hate and confusion, rebellion and continuity errors. It is a Leviathan.
No! The last time I reviewed Dark Shadows, I did the 1897 story, which is one of the best and most beloved storylines on all of Dark Shadows. Today, I'm reviewing the most hated, the Leviathan story, which are episodes 880 to 986 in DVD volumes 17 through 19. Although some people do like it, it is generally despised by most Dark Shadows fans, and even by some of the cast and crew. But does it deserve this hate? I must find out. The 1897 storyline had brought Dark Shadows its highest ratings, and 18 million viewers. The character of Quentin Collins was now just as popular as Barnabas, and creator-producer Dan Curtis was arranging to make a Dark Shadows movie. However, the 1897 storyline was coming to a close, and Dan and the writers yet again faced the problem of what are we going to do next? They had already done a vampire story, a witch, a werewolf, a ghost, and even a Frankenstein. And they were starting to run out of monsters. Then they found their answer in the famous American horror writer, H.P. Lovecraft.
Lovecraft published his stories in pulp magazines like Weird Tales, and he created a shared universe of horror stories that are referred to as the Cthulhu mythos. Several of these tales involved ancient demonic beings trying to return to Earth. The Dark Shadows writers were especially interested in the story The Dunwich Horror, which focused on a hideous boy named Wilbur Whatley, who is shunned by the community and grows at an abnormally fast rate. He also has a monstrous twin brother, Yog-Sothoth, who is invisible, feeds on cattle, and has a terrible stench. Walter and his brother were combined to create the character Jeb Hawks.
For such complex material, this storyline was done in one of the most turbulent times. The producer Bob Costello had recently left the show. Dan Curtis, who was really the main creative force behind Dark Shadows, was busy planning the movie, and to a certain extent so were the show's main writers, Sam Hall and Gordon Russell. Also, instead of filming 5 shows a week, the show had been doing 6 shows a week for a while, in order to create a backlog of episodes, and they were actually a month ahead. While this may sound great, it actually became a hindrance. Serves you right for being organized. Fans used to literally hang out outside the studio, and if they didn't like something, they'd tell them, and the writers could change it right away. You think that character's a dork? We'll kill him next Monday. But with being so far ahead, they lost that ability. This story was advertised as one of the most terrifying tales ever told, but many feel that it was actually the beginning of the end of Dark Shadows.
Leviathans are evil creatures that existed before mankind. In 1776, they capture Barnabas and make him their human leader. After he returns to the present, he gives the Leviathan box to Philip and Megan Todd, who own an antique shop in Collinsport. Out of the box comes the Leviathan essence. He has a true monstrous form, but also a human form. First, he's the baby Joseph, then Alexander, then Michael, and finally he becomes Jeb Hawks. And he plans to make Carolyn his Leviathan bride. The reason for this arrangement is 20 years ago, Paul Stoddard, Carolyn's father, jokingly offered his most precious possession in return for success. Paul returns to Collinsport and is terrorized by the Leviathans. Quentin returns to Collinsport too, but after Barnabas hits him with his car, he loses his memory. Angelique is happily married to Sky Rumson, but they are both keeping secrets from each other. And Chris Jennings is still a werewolf. With all these problems, only Dr. Julia Hoffman can save the day.
Some people hate this storyline. Some people love it. And I think the reason people have such strong opinions on it is because it's unlike any other Dark Shadows story.
Usually, Dark Shadows drew inspiration from gothic horror, like Dracula and Turn of the Screw. But here, they're going for more science fiction, and drawing inspiration from Lovecraft, The Village of the Damned, and even Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
The story has an atmosphere of impending doom because the Leviathans seem unstoppable, and it has an atmosphere of paranoia. Shh, I think someone's trying to take my Dark Shadows collection. Because almost anyone could be turned into a Leviathan, so we don't know whom to trust. And the characters we thought we knew and cared about have suddenly changed and become evil. There's a great many of them, people you least suspect. Will you name one of them? I'll name one, all right. My wife, Elizabeth Collins Stoddard. Doing this type of material as a soap opera is just as innovative as bringing a vampire on. Unfortunately, they didn't give it enough thought and attention. For example, when it came to showing Jeb in his monster form, they totally took the easy way out. They always do those scenes from the monster's point of view, and we just see the person it's going to kill. This approach is suspenseful at first, but we never get the payoff of actually seeing the monster.
And they could have figured something out, even if it was just a Twilight Zone type makeup.
Also, unlike vampires, the Leviathans are our original Dark Shadows monster, and all we know about them is what they tell us. Unfortunately, Leviathan rules change constantly. Early on, they say Leviathans can't kill their enemies because their enemies will come back stronger. But later on, they kill the sheriff and things go swimmingly. Continuity error could be Sam Hall and Gordon Russell's middle name. But in a story this intricate, with monsters we're unfamiliar with, it suddenly makes it very confusing. Even the writers got confused and had to go outside and ask the fans what was going on. And it takes you out of the story. While I have a problem with this, I actually really enjoy the characters. The story has some great and some controversial characters in the Dark Shadows world, and our new baddie is the leader of the Leviathans, Jeb Hawkes. It's played by Christopher Pennock. When Chris auditioned for Dark Shadows, it was actually for the role of Philip Todd, but during the audition, Dan Curtis said, no, he's gonna play the thing in the box. Sounds better than Hamlet.
Indeed, Jeb starts off as a mere essence from the Leviathan box, and is taken care of partially by Philip, but mainly by the overly devoted Megan Todd. When he's not a monster, he's in human form, and like Wilbur in the Dunwich Horror, he grows up rapidly. First, he's an unseen baby named Joseph. Then he's the little bully Alexander. Why, I oughta. Then he's the snotty and spoiled Michael, and finally he becomes Jeb Hawkes.
Jeb Hawkes is evil, arrogant, and violent. If he'd rank more, he'd be a Collins. But he's also charismatic and a little bit of a hippie. Peace, love, being scary. He uses 60s slang like man and cool. And he acts like an angry rebel when dealing with the Leviathan book and when interacting with the more adult characters. Don't touch me! Don't touch me! You thought I was gonna kill you, didn't you, Doctor? Well, I may. It depends on you. It depends entirely on you. So play it cool. As destined, Jeb is immediately attracted to Carolyn. But when she sees him in his monster form, she faints, and he starts to actually care about her. He becomes vulnerable and discovers a side to himself that he didn't know existed. While Jeb changes for the better, many people believe that Barnabas changes for the worse.
Barnabas, is played by Jonathan Frid, is forced to become the human leader of the Leviathans because they are holding Josette captive and they threaten to turn him into a vampire again. Faced with this dreaded double whammy, Barnabas gives in to the Leviathans and becomes a cold-hearted evil being, even to his old friends.
Barnabas! That box was in this house before. May I look at it? No, don't touch. You must never touch this, Julia. It happens to be very old. What could be in here? Get your hands off of that and get out of my house. Then and now, this is the biggest complaint about this storyline. And in the words of Victoria Winters, I don't understand. While I do like the more heroic Barnabas of the past couple stories, this gives Jonathan Frid a new aspect of Barnabas to explore, which keeps the series fresh. Also, I think he brings a special zest to his performance whenever he gets to be completely evil. And I like it when him and Julia are at conflict, because both of them get to show the true strength of their characters. While I like it, this got such a bad reaction from fans that they had to quickly write and produce an emergency episode, 915, that was snuck in the middle of the regular episodes, and the entire segment was made just to remind people that Barnabas was still a good guy and that he was just being forced to act this way. I cannot forget that Julia Hoffman risked her life for me. I cannot take her life, and I cannot let anyone else take it either. Barnabas does eventually break free and tries to stall and thwart the Leviathan's plan, but they make good on their word and turn him into a bloodthirsty, yet reluctant vampire again, which is Barnabas at his best. The final character that makes this storyline so special is a character we've heard about from the beginning of the show. Elizabeth's husband and Carolyn's absent father, Paul Stoddard, is played by Dennis Patrick.
When Paul skipped out on Collinwood 20 years ago, he unknowingly sold Carolyn to the Leviathans in exchange for success. But things have been going bad lately, so he returns to Collinsport as a reformed man who is anxious to meet his daughter.
I admitted, Carolyn, I was poor, and your mother's money tempted me. I tried to take it from her. I'm sorry. Since then, I learned that money isn't all that important. He brings real warmth to his scenes with Carolyn, and real terror to his scenes when dealing with the Leviathans. My only disappointment is, as important as this character is to the show overall, they don't use him much. He's there mainly for the Leviathan plot, and I wish there had been more family drama scenes, because the few that they had, I really enjoyed. Along with enjoying the characters, I also love how they throw everything but the kitchen sink into this storyline. They knew this storyline wasn't working, and ordinarily they probably would have just dropped it. But the ending of this storyline had to correspond with the beginning of production of the Dark Shadows movie. So instead, they just throw every quick fix they could think of to just please make it work.
They throw in all the famous characters like Angelique the Witch, Willie Loomis, the homicidal Bruno, and Nicholas Blair the Warlock. There are monster battles between Jeb and the werewolf. Barnabas and Megan both become vampires, and there are even crazy dream sequences.
Step this way, and Elizabeth into the funhouse. Why did you bring me here, David? To laugh, Aunt Elizabeth. You don't laugh enough. Fat and Skinny had a race all around the pillowcase. Mac fell down and broke his face, and Skinny said, "I won the race." I like it. No. We Dark Shadows fans like all this stuff, so it's enjoyable, but it's so obvious why they're doing it. And as someone who likes this story, as much as I like Nicholas Blair, I would rather have a tighter storyline, because occasionally this story just drags, especially at the end.
Fans were disappointed in this storyline, and the super high ratings began to go down. The series was cancelled 1 year later. After the Leviathan story wrapped up, there were plans to go back in time to 1796 again, show Peter Bradford and Victoria Winters, and do the Jeb Hawkes backstory. But plans were dropped when Alexander Mulkey refused to come back. Although this story is considered a dud, Christopher Pennock became an embraced Dark Shadows cast member. He played several more characters on the show, appeared in teen magazines, attends Dark Shadows conventions, and is one of the most active Dark Shadows cast members on Facebook. In fact, when I was doing a speech on Dark Shadows for school, he let me interview him, so he literally helped me with my homework.
The Leviathans was such an ambitious and unique storyline for Dark Shadows. But because of a few significant flaws, a lot of people write it off as a total misfire. But it's not as bad as people make it sound. In fact, there's some really good stuff in it. So I give it 2.5 strange, slimy substances out of 4. Thank you for watching Dusty Old Movies, and have a monstrous day!